So now is the time after the town election and reorganize, and we have the town clerk here. She can come up and conduct a vote for the president of the council.
Okay, I open nominations for the president of the town council.
I'd like to nominate, Ted Haley for president.
Ted Haley nominated. Are there any other nominations?
I would like to nominate Dennis Gallagher.
We'll do vice president next. The president will run the vice presidential.
I'll second that nomination.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a nomination and a second. Seeing no other nominations, the nominations are closed. I will then
Roll call vote by Ms.
call
Holmberg.
vote. Ms. Holmberg is going to take the roll call vote.
Mrs. Loesch?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Chase? Yes? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Haley?
I'd say yes.
Mr. Fitzgibbons?
Yes.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
8 in favor, none against.
Well, let's see settled. Get our seats set.
Pass me that phone. First. Well, that was fast. So now that we still have the clerk, we also have the vice president nomination I may have heard. So perhaps we should undertake that. Do we have a nomination for vice president?
I would like to nominate Mr. Gallagher for vice president.
I'll second that.
I'll second it. Too many seconds.
And the roll call vote?
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
Mr. Haley?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgibbons?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mrs. Loesch?
Yes.
8 in favor, none against.
So we'll take our seats, then I'd like to have a short recess.
Not yet. My
take
favorite
your
thing to
seats.
do is organize things. So we're going to organize, we're going to reorganize. I'm going to come around with cards. You're going to pick one, it will designate where you're going to sit. The ace is a 1, okay? And there are no... President and president are situated where they're situated, so there are no 4 and 5 in here. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay?
And we're back. Thank you for voting me in as your president. This is going to be a great trip. So, first, I'd like to start off with a letter of condolence on behalf of James S. Frizzetti upon his passing on February 8th, 2018. Mr. Frizzetti served in the United States Army during World War II. He retired from Bridgewater State University Police Department after 25 years of service. And I'd like to have a moment of silence for him and his family and the rest of our veterans and people who served us. Thank you. So with announcements from the President. So we have the Memorial Day Parade will be held on Monday, May 28th. Participants will gather on Perkins Avenue at 10 a.m. Units will proceed at 10:30 a.m. south on Route 18 to a ceremony at Bridgewater Common at approximately 11 a.m. What's the date on that? May 28th. Monday, May 28th. We will gather at 10 a.m. at Perkins Ave, and we will step off at 10:30, heading south on Route 18 towards the Common. The ceremony at the Common will be at 11, Monday, May 28th. The Bridgewater 4th of July Committee fundraising announcement. We're excited for our 2018 celebration, but need help to make it happen. So thanks for considering a donation. The big push is back. Purchase a ticket and a chance to start Bridgewater official fireworks show. Raffles are available for $5 each. The winner will push the start button to begin the fireworks display, which is obviously really cool. All proceeds benefit the 4th of July Committee. Tickets will be on sale at the schools, or you can email Lisa at buzzcurl@comcast.net. Also looking for a singer for the national anthem. Upload your demo to the YouTube and email Lisa at bridgewaterma4th.com. Must be comfortable singing in front of a rather large crowd. We have a great turnout. I hope to
Mr.
have another
President,
great
I believe they found a singer.
They may have found a singer. Word is that there's a singer
It's not
found,
me.
and it's not you.
Just singing?
So, good news. You can still submit your video for viewing and get your YouTube hits up, but somebody's already been found at this point. That's the rumor. Now we turn to proclamations. We do have a proclamation. I believe Mr. Wood will take the reins for this for the Bridgewater Rainham Robotics Team, TJ Squared.
All right, welcome team. Lots of tie-dye in here. The Town Council presents this proclamation to recognize TJ Squared Day. Whereas the Bridgewater Rainham High School Robotics Team had an outstanding year, and whereas the team has been led for over 20 years by an exceptional teacher, Mrs. Califf, and whereas the team TJ Squared qualified for the FRC Robotics World Championships based on the performance of the team and the skills of their robot named Triple Stack. So therefore, we declare the 88th day of the year to be TJ Squared Day. And celebrate this in the form of a poem. Team 88, known as TJ Squared, builds robots with wires and motors and a little aware. For the first 15 seconds, the bot is on its own as it navigates obstacles and delivers a game piece to the scale or a zone. In FIRST Robotics, cooperation is the name of the game, whereas alliances on the fields are red and they are blue. It is here the students learn STEM and a little art too. TJ Squared won district events in Worcester and at home, led by teachers, coaches, and mentors, and even a Jerome. Blue banners fill the halls and tie-dye shirts fill the stands, but least we forget the best prize of all, the FRC Spirit Award given for cheering. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So Mrs. Califf, if you can come up and with Representative maybe? Thank you.
And now we move to citizens' open forum. Anybody does have anything to say, please state your name and address, and feel free to bring up subjects at will in a decent time.
I'm Danielle Silva from 20 Tommy Ann Terrace. Good evening. Well, President Haley, members of the Town Council, Mr. Dutton, and Attorney Rollins. I'm here tonight as a parent of 2 children at the Mitchell and as a teacher in another district. Last meeting, I spoke outlining the concerns regarding the increase in class sizes. In addition, I mentioned briefly the concerns about rising mental health issues. The combination of larger class sizes and social emotional needs of our students will have a detrimental effect on our children if these needs are not addressed. I feel it's important to share these alarming numbers for social and emotional visits from our BR school community. 6,102 social emotional visits. 1,156 referred to guidance office. 28 calls to mobile crisis. 25 calls to 911. And 77 student cases resulted in hospitalization. These numbers are alarming and shocking. These reflect the 2016-2017 school year. From September 2017, just so we can have more up to date, just in the middle school in Bridgewater, as well as the high school, there have been 20 911 calls for psychological phone calls, 18 mobile crisis calls, 45 psych hospitalizations. There have also been calls and hospitalizations at the elementary level, but that information is not up to date. In a recent 2018 Outlook survey, 71% of district leaders responded that they are very concerned regarding mental health issues in our schools. I'm very concerned the direction of our schools if we can't level fund our schools and the negative impact it will have on our children. The elementary grades are truly the building block of a child's social and academic pathway. Let's set them up for success. I'm asking that you please level fund the school district budget for FY19. Thank you for your time. I'm also, if it's okay, I'm going to speak again on behalf of Marie Fahey. She's also a resident of Bridgewater and the nurse leader. She's at 105 Bayberry Circle in Bridgewater, if that's okay. I am sorry I'm unable to attend the council meeting this evening. I have been very concerned about the rising trend in our mental health issues among our youth. We have seen a marked increase in social emotional visits to the health office, resulting many referrals to guidance and outside agencies. We are seeing many more students with anxiety and depression that need support on a daily basis. The addition of adjustment counselors is crucial for their overall health and well-being. I know you have to make difficult budget decisions. Please provide level funding for FY19 to ensure our children a successful and healthy future. She also had some numbers down. There are 129 depression diagnoses, 377 behavior and emotional conditions. That's approximately 10% of our population with that need. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration of this matter. Respectfully submitted, Marie Fahey. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments for open forum? Seeing none, we move to appointments. Having none, we move to hearings. Having none, we move to license transactions. Also having none, we move to presentations. Mr. David Moore for a presentation on the Hometown Hero Project. Welcome, Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. President. Presently serving as the chairman of the Historical Commission. And usually these projects, or this type of project that I'm coming before you tonight, is of a historic nature. Now, a little historic trivia I'll throw out. I'm not looking for an answer now, but at the end of the presentation, I'll ask for an answer. Does anybody in town know where the War Memorial Auditorium is? So, getting on to my presentation. A couple years ago, I was riding around in central Pennsylvania in the middle of February, and I was riding through some of the coal mining towns, as I come into the town, a cold February day, I see banners hanging from the flagpoles and light poles. And I had to pull over and take a look to see what they were. What kind of a celebration would you be having in a decimated coal mining town? It was down to half its population. And what it was, there were banners of servicemen hanging on the street light poles. Next town up, same thing. So I decided to pull in and ask somebody, what is this all about in the middle of February? Well, they had a program where they decided they wanted to recognize veterans in their towns. So they sold banners to residents in town who wished to have their family members, friends, and so forth displayed around town. And I thought this was really neat. You get a down-and-out town of 3,000 people, and they think enough of their vets to be having them all over the place. So I said, I got to try this in Bridgewater. I've come back, and I've talked to a number of people. I've done some research on towns in the area that have done it. I spoke with the people down in Dartmouth. I spoke with an organization up in Sanford, Maine, that's done it. And everybody I've talked to, even the people down in Pennsylvania, they've had to cut off the programs, where in that there were too many people signed up and they didn't have enough light poles to hang these banners. Pennsylvania, they hang them up for 365 days. They were going on 2.5 years when I saw them. Dartmouth has them up for a couple of weeks. Sanford, Maine has them up for a couple of weeks from on Memorial Day and a couple of weeks at the end of and Veterans Day. And they're displayed in other places in town. They're displayed on people's homes and so forth. My concern with the veterans is that most veterans, and I plead ignorance, I know, who's Frank? I know Frank's a vet, and there may be some others that I'm speaking to right now. Vets are pretty modest people, and they don't like to they're not going to beat their own drum as far as their service goes. And I think that's up to us, up to the townspeople, and to express our gratitude for the service that they put in. Within 100 yards of this podium right here, there are names posted of probably 400 service people from the Civil War right up through our current war on terror. There's no faces. If you knew one of these vets, you know the face. A very close friend of mine, classmate for 12 years in schools in Bridgewater and 2 years in college. He's at the top of the Vietnam vet on the memorial over there. He was killed in action. Nobody knows his face. So what I would like to do is I would like to get a committee going in town. I've talked to a number of people. I've talked to the VFW. I'm going to see the Vets Council tomorrow night. I will be talking with the American Legion soon. And this is a sample of one of the banners in Pennsylvania. The company that did them, sent one up to me. I have no idea who Christine Smith is, other than she's a vet.
The audience may want to see too.
It's done on both sides. You can share a banner with somebody if you like, and have one, if you have two people you want to display, you have one person on each side. I said in Pennsylvania, this banner has been up for almost 3 years, and it's held up really well. I've talked to some of the local merchants. I wouldn't go to Pennsylvania for them, only because of the shipping costs and everything else. There are some great people in town I've talked with that can put them together for us to meet our needs. Now, ultimately, if the program takes off, I would love to see these banners, Memorial Day and Veterans Day, and maybe some time in between, lining the light poles from Legion Field right through the center of town, around the Common, put them all up. I don't know if that's going to be possible. Number one, I've been in contact with the telephone company. They own the poles. We have to get permission from them. They have said that town activities are one activity that they will recognize and they will allow to go on their poles. I do have to get, they have a form that they will be sending me, and I will have to come to the town because the poles are on town property. So they want to make sure that the town is aware of this, and that if one of these banners comes down, the telephone company will not be held responsible for it. The banners will be held on brackets, commercially made, to withstand high winds and abuse. And all the towns that I've talked to, they have not had any trouble with any of these banners coming down in any winds or whatever. If the ones that be hung on the poles on the streets have to meet state standards, and the bottom of the banner has to be 14 feet off the roadway, so nobody will hit it. The people up in Sanford, Maine, who are doing this, I thought they had probably the most impressive program in that they've involved the school system, in that they've taken all the banners and the pictures and they put them into a book, and they published it, and they sell it for veterans services and so forth. They have the English classes doing research and writing short autobiographies to go with these men. The music department studies music of the period. They started with World War II. They went and they did World War I. Now they're working on Korea. And it's a school-wide project. It's a town-wide project. Sanford is about a little smaller than Bridgewater. But I think if the program gets going, it can really take off. So that's why I have to put together a committee, because I certainly can't do this by myself. I want the input from the vets. I want input from the council. I want input from citizens of Bridgewater. And I will be coming back to the council and to the town with whatever agreement that Verizon requests that the council examine for legal purposes. I'm the son of a vet and the father of a vet, and I want some faces up there to honor the people in my family and my friends. Now, War Memorial Auditorium, where is it? Anybody know?
Right here. Brockton?
Nope. Bridgewater. It's in Bridgewater.
You're sitting in it.
And it came up. It was constructed on the idea of men returning from World War II. And it has moved from its original location.
Vets Club.
No. It was originally the new auditorium at the Bridgewater's first high school on South Street. When the building was torn down, we saved the plaque, and about 10 years ago, the plaque was moved, and the auditorium at the regional high school was dedicated as the War Memorial Auditorium. So that's another reason we've got to recognize our vets. So,
Mr. Moore, do you want this to be an official committee of the town, or is it something you're going to put together on your own and go from there?
Well, I don't know how much town government wants to get involved. We're not looking for any money from town government. We'll be looking for some meeting space and so forth. We'd love to have the town involved in it as much as they can.
It sounds like you have an idea and you want to run with it, and it sounds great to me, and I don't want to get you bogged down in bureaucracy.
Well, we don't want to get bogged down either. So, but I would like the support of the council. You can discuss it at a later date or whatever. And when I have my paperwork from Verizon, I'll be back before you. And I'll give you an update on what's going on, but we'd like to run with it from here.
Thank you.
Any questions? My name and phone number and email address is on the packet that I gave you. And I welcome questions and input from everybody. So we want to make this a great event for the town.
It's a wonderful idea, and thank you for your time, and thank you for this idea. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Now for a brief town manager's report.
Guess some things don't change. Mr. President, congratulations to all the councilors on re-election and certainly the election of officers. Look forward to the next year. Brief town manager's report this evening, but I do have a few items I want to get out to you and certainly the folks that are watching at home. We did have board and committee hearing training last week, which was, I think, very well attended and for the most part well received. This is the kind of training that I've talked about before, and I think it's critical to do as we try to sort of professionalize the committee and board process. And certainly when making land use decisions, we also want to make sure that we build solid records upon which those decisions can be made. And we also want to make sure that we're making decisions that will withstand appeal and other kinds of scrutiny. So for that reason, we did a lot, we did this session of board training. We will probably follow up with that. We definitely will follow up with that with additional trainings and guidance for some of the boards and committees. And obviously, I recognize that we have volunteers on these. A lot of them are first-time volunteers that haven't served on a municipal board or committee, so it's sort of incumbent on us to be able to give them some solid guidance and not just simply throw people to the wolves, so to speak. But almost more importantly, I think it's important that we respect the time and the efforts that the volunteers are giving the town and town governance. So we just want to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure meetings are run very efficiently. So that is an ongoing effort, but I think the initial kickoff was fairly well received, and we'll follow up on that with additional guidance and training. As you know, I sit on, as well as a number of you, sit on the Mitchell School Building Committee, and I am one of the 3 members designated to sit on the designer selection panel for the hiring of the architect for the Mitchell project. So the panel itself is made up of about 20 members, which include architects, school building authority staff, and then there are 3 representatives from Bridgewater. So Paul Fox, who's the facilities director at the district, the superintendent and I are those 3 members. And today we met in Boston. We selected 3 finalists. I think we were very pleased with the results of that meeting and those selections. Those 3 will be interviewed by the same panel in a couple of weeks, and then a hiring decision should be made very shortly after that. But overall, I think that the Mitchell feasibility phase continues to be ahead of schedule, and certainly my thanks to the superintendent for his work with the MSBA to get them everything they need so that they can turn around on a dime and do what we need to do what they need to do so that we can do what we need to do. Our district infrastructure financing work continues. We're meeting this week with the developer proposing the large new facility on Elm Street, and we expect to finalize the financing and the timeline of their project so that meshes with our road improvement schedule. And I can tell you these types of programs that we're starting to do now don't go unnoticed. Sometimes I think it's easy for us to think that we work in a vacuum and nobody else, outside of our borders really pays much attention. I can tell you that's quite the opposite. These are the programs that do get noticed, both at a state level and a private business level. I think they're seen in a positive light, obviously. And overall, I think the DIF program is seen as a positive step, certainly as we move forward. So we'll be moving forward in a number of partnerships with the state, is my hope. And the fruit of that will be the amount of grant funding that we can bring into Bridgewater for a number of different projects that need some attention. In a similar vein, I think I mentioned last week the Opportunity Zone designation, which is a federal designation. It hasn't been finalized by the U.S. Treasury yet, but again, before it was even released to the broader public, and the day after it was announced, I got calls from interested developers in the zone. They want to know exactly where the zone was, and whatever parameters we had for the development. So we do have some meetings scheduled with the state to develop some promotional materials on that initiative in order to better market those opportunities to developers. Comprehensive rezoning project begins in earnest this summer with a build-out analysis and the current zoning analysis. This will give us sort of a baseline and a lot of information upon which we can make better decisions regarding zoning. The end product, as I've mentioned before, my intent is to have a complete new zoning ordinance, which will replace completely the current one. Between that and now, we've got a lot of work to do. As I say, there's the build-out analysis and the current zoning analysis, and then the creation of a committee that's going to advise the consultant on the steps and the zoning that we adopt moving forward. The 2018 Employee and Retiree Health Fair was very well attended, and we do put a lot of effort into that. Certainly, the folks in my office do their best to make that a very successful event. Sometimes people wonder why we put that amount of effort, and I think sometimes the vendors wonder why we put that amount of effort into it, because they routinely say that of those that go to a lot of these things, they say ours is really one of the best ones. And we do that really for a number of reasons, because I think it sends a very positive message to employees and retirees that we care about the benefits that we're able to extend to them. But I think it also tells employees and retirees that we're very interested in making sure that they lead healthy lives. We hear a lot of jokes about wellness programs, and I think people think that that's sort of a feel-good thing. In reality, no, it's a very important part of what we offer to both our workforce and retirees. To the extent that we can keep people healthy, we can reduce the amount of, or at least stabilize the dollars that we spend on our health insurance. So the good news is that went very well. And actually, the further good news is that we've got a number of cases where we have seen employees really change lifestyles and lead healthier lives. So that's good news for us. Breaking news story. Broke this afternoon, and it's a real break because it's a water main break on Broad Street. And I bring it up, normally wouldn't, but I bring it up because in this case, private contractor hit a water main that was not mapped on our town system. So I've mentioned before in passing that this is a chronic problem in Bridgewater. It's one that we're working on to actually know where all our water mains are. And the crews, anybody that came up Broad Street probably saw the crews out there trying to shut off valves here and there because they're having a hard time identifying the valves that actually control that particular main that's not mapped on our system. So that is ongoing, but I trust, as they always do, they'll find the valve and they'll get in, they'll make the repair, they'll mark the pipe on the map, and we'll move on. We are polishing off a grant request this week it's an application for Municipal Vulnerability Planning money, MVP, and it's issued by the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, or whatever it's called now. And these grants are designed to help communities plan for extreme weather events and climate changes. Most of the monies that you've seen from these types of grants have gone to coastal communities, and the EOEEA is adamant that it's open to everybody, and it's to give us some planning money to plan certain mitigation projects and plan certain, shoveling, no, that's the wrong term, but very concrete steps that we can take to mitigate around, specifically in our case, around dams, drainage systems, and roadways. So as everybody knows, we're impacted by winter storms pretty severely. Our roads are certainly impacted. I've seen evidence that they're very impacted. Drainage systems can't keep up with a lot of our recent rainfall events, and certainly the dams, a number of dams in town, both municipally owned and privately owned, need attention as we move forward. So these monies help us plan for that. And again, as I mentioned, I think with housing initiatives, there are certain grants, state grants, that if we are successful and if we do the work that the grant requires, then lead to larger grants for things that we really need money to help do. Just FYI, I'm beginning 4 collective bargaining negotiations this month. My goal, as it always is, but hasn't come to fruition in the last few years, is to resolve these before the end of the fiscal year, or very soon after the beginning of next fiscal year. And I think, as most of the council has seen the 5-year projections, I think that work goes a long way to being very forthcoming with the bargaining units about exactly what we can afford and exactly where we stand as a town. So I think that hopefully that work will translate into a very efficient bargaining negotiations. But you'll see the fruits of that labor hopefully soon after the beginning of the fiscal year. Just a quick note, and I'll keep you updated on a regular basis on this. The Finance Department has continued to do a lot of excellent work on tax title, catching up on tax title properties. And as you learned from our auditors, I believe we had almost a $2 million tag on our uncollected taxes. Now, a good chunk of that, just as an FYI, a good chunk of that is essentially what I'll call uncollectible, but a good chunk of it is not. And so they've done an excellent job already, and we'll be looking to keep the council updated on that as it moves forward. All good news there. A reminder that the budget hearing on the FY19 budget is Tuesday the 22nd. That's Tuesday the 22nd at 7:30 right here in the council chambers. Budget hearing is open for anybody that wants to come and speak on the budget at that time. But again, that's Tuesday the 22nd right here in the council chambers. Also a reminder that BSU graduation is this weekend. There is one graduate student graduation on Thursday at 6:30. Then Saturday they will be doing the same double graduation ceremony, double ceremony, one at 9, one at 3 p.m. They've done this, I think, the last 2 years, and it seems to work out fairly well for everyone. So BSU graduation. So don't get in your car and decide you're going to race through town on Saturday. The only other item, I just would normally tell the president this, but I didn't know who the president was going to be, so I'll tell everyone. The item on your agenda coming up for action on the McElwain, although the Budget and Finance Committee took a vote on that at their meeting yesterday. Unfortunately, you can't vote on that because the Finance Committee is going to have to re-vote based on our town attorney's recommendation that it needed to be on their agenda in order for them to have a valid vote. So, so we will put it back on for the 22nd, and we'll revisit that one. Will be deja vu when the time comes. And that's what I have.
Thank you. So now we have comments and questions from the council.
Just one question.
Souza?
Mr. Dutton,
Yes.
the Broad Street project, the mixed use, there was an issue on the number of housing units per acre, 16 in the ordinance, 18. Is it being something done to change the ordinance so it's not just a let's fully favor this one contractor?
Nope, that's actually a great question. Our Community Economic Development Director has been working on zoning changes that would encompass the entire area, either the entire central business district or the entire stretch of Broad Street. So I've said, I think the committee that former President Fitzgibbons put together admittedly has had a hard time trying to get a date scheduled to meet again, but I think the next meeting will be coming up, and we'll be proposing zoning that would encompass the entire stretch, not just one property.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Wood?
Favorite subject. So on Thursday morning, I drove by Skips, which is apparently going to be renamed, and there was zero activity, even though I believe that we've sufficiently passed our deadline. So there is some activity I'm aware of, but I'm wondering if we can get a very hard deadline at this point and keep to that deadline. And if the deadline is not met, that we actually have a hearing at the next council meeting after that for license discussion.
The answer to that is I would be happy to get a hard date, and with the understanding that if the hard date's not met, then we'll proceed with our license revocation hearing.
Okay, because I'm asking in favor of other businesses that have been asking about this license that's been held back for 3.5 years now. There are other businesses that would make use of that license, and by population, we're allowed to use it. So I like to be pro-business there. Okay.
Souza?
Yeah, I believe when I drove by it, they had a help wanted sign out there, so they must be getting close. You don't ask for help, to hire help if you're not ready to bring them in.
I did notice that
It's
a help
getting
wanted
there.
sign, yes. No interior, just a little bit of frames, but they're looking for help, so maybe it's to finish the building. Any other comments or questions for the town manager for his report? Seeing none. Now we move on to Order 0-FY18-03.
Sorry, we
Mr. President?
discussion,
Sorry?
committee reports?
Committee reports, yes. Any committee reports? Thank you, Mr. Wood. Ms. Loesch?
Yes, so the Rules and Procedures Committee met earlier this month, so last week, and we are starting to look at our council rules. There are a few things that we practice that need to be updated in our current rules because we're not practicing what we preach or what was written. So there'll be some updates there. So I believe I'll be proposing proper things to get it into our committee officially, do the track changes, and present it back to the council just so everyone can see. But it's just looking at some things. I don't think it's ever been changed since the council has been put into office or power, whatever the right word is. So we'll be doing that, and we also have a few ordinances that do need to come back to the council, but we're waiting for other committees to meet so we can align our ordinances with what gets passed via the planning board and the CEDC.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Mr. Wood?
Thank you. The Budget and Finance Committee met last night with the Finance Committee, and although it's not on our agenda tonight, I think it's 5 articles for the budget have been approved by both bodies. And all that was on both agendas, so we could do that. We had a good discussion about sources of revenue and preventive maintenance of things, use of ambulance funds, and also a little bit about free cash. This week I was able to pull up the order that we put in. There's a prescribed use of free cash. I think there may be some confusion about it. It's predicted actually for the next couple of years, if the economy stays strong, that we will have free cash certified in the fall. Right now we have a formula about what to use that free cash with, and the example that we saw last night was the elevator for, I think it's the middle school, is going to be funded out of a capital expense fund, which is funded by free cash. And so it's a way to share revenue with capital needs of the school and such. One thing I'm going to ask the clerk to do, the council clerk, is to reshare that document from 2013 with the entire council. At our next meeting, I intend to reintroduce that as a new order with that same text. And the homework for the body here is to review the percentages that are assigned there. And if there's a need to reformat how that formula works, that'll start the process. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Thank you.
Any other reports from any committees? Seeing none, now legislation for action. Order 0-FY18-034, acceptance of other one-time revenue for special purpose, brought up by the town manager. Would you like to explain that, sir?
Yes, sir. This is a one-time revenue, as you, I believe, last meeting voted another portion of this, but this is a payment that was made by Long-Built Homes pursuant to an agreement with the planning board in the town, and it specifically is money that will be used to complete the Cherry Street repaving project, along with the money that you had voted last meeting.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion?
None for me.
Both committees last night voted in favor of this, to support this and recommend it to council.
Okay, any other comments? All right, let's take a roll call vote.
Mr. Fitzgibbons?
Yes.
Mrs. Loesch?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Haley?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
8 in favor, none against.
Moving on to the next order. Order OFY18-034, acceptance of other one-time revenue for special purposes. For the town manager to explain.
Thank you, Mr. President. 035 is acceptance of one-time revenue from Bridgewater Homes. Bridgewater Homes is the successor to, I think, what was used to be referred to as Pratttown Estates. It's a 40B, approved 40B project on Plymouth Street, and their conditions as drafted by this and passed by the ZBA were that upon the issuance of the 10th certificate of occupancy, that $7,000 would be paid, and then later on another $7,000 would be paid. Both of those are to be used for the purpose of drafting or adopting a affordable housing production plan, or for the development of affordable housing. So that's what they will be segregated for, but that's simply pursuant to the ZBA's decision in that particular 40B.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any comments? Additional council comments?
Once again, the vote last night by both bodies was in favor of recommending this.
And this requires also a roll call vote.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Haley?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mrs. Loesch?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgibbons?
Yes.
8 in favor, none against.
Moving on, proposed order OFY18-037, CPC transfer preservation assessment of 2 Old Bridgewater Historical Society buildings and their collections. Again, refer to the town manager for further explanation.
Mr. President, this comes to you based on a Community Preservation Committee recommendation. And this money is requested, a total of $20,000 is requested to do an assessment, a preservation assessment of 2 structures, as well as the collections in those structures. And this, as I say, was approved by the Community and Preservation Committee, and is part of the CPC process. So I will point out, and I know Councilor Wood has done some research on this. Both of these both of these structures are in West Bridgewater. I think there was some confusion at the last meeting about whether one was actually in Bridgewater, but both are in West Bridgewater. And that is fine by community preservation rules and the community preservation law. It's absolutely fine and appropriate to allocate and appropriate CPC money from Bridgewater that may be used for a purpose that's outside of town. So.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Mr. Fitzgibbons?
I think Mr. Wood will probably make the same points he made at the last meeting as to how he came to support this and explain the subcommittee votes, et cetera.
Thank you. So first, last night we met, and you'll notice I say last night, Budget and Finance voted. We did vote before, but we re-voted a lot of these things. We had the full committee there last night. At first, I was actually opposed to this because the buildings were outside of Bridgewater, but Mr. Hunt and others made it very clear and actually turned my head on the subject about the fact that these are regional resources, and the artifacts within the buildings are Bridgewater artifacts. So we are actually preserving Bridgewater items through this use, and the CPC supported it. Both bodies last night supported it. So hopefully everybody at the table here supports it. Thank you.
Any other comments? This will also require a roll call vote.
Mr. Fitzgibbons?
Yes.
Mrs. Loesch?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Haley?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
8 in favor, none against.
Moving on to,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
on this subject, I would like to introduce the president from the Old Bridgewater Historical Society.
My name is Shelley Carol Chicken on behalf of the society and the artifacts.
So people at home can hear you.
People are watching at home. Not as many as they're here, but there are some.
I'd like to make a motion to allow someone from out of town to speak.
I'll second that.
Oh, all right.
Oh, I am a resident,
I
yes.
make a motion to allow someone to speak in the non-comment area.
Second.
I have been the president of the Old Bridgewater Historical Society for 2 years, and both of our buildings pertain, as Mr. Wood said, to the colonial history of the Bridgewater settlement. And on behalf of OBHS, I would like to say thank you for allowing us to get this done.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work.
She's also a Keith related to the Reverend James, the first minister of Bridgewater.
The name's on the plaque in the library, so many other places.
Which is why I'm teary. This is, one of these buildings happens to be the home of my 8 great-grandfathers, so it's very personal for me. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. That's astonishing, your 8th grandfather. So for a final order for legislation tonight for Order O-FY18-038, sewer enterprise transfers for capital special purpose transfers. Again, for the town manager.
Mr. President, for those counselors who have been here a while, we routinely have been losing rotating biological contactors, which are large rotating biological contactors. And
Do they rotate?
Rotating, yes,
Do they come in contact with biological material?
most of the time.
Thank you.
If they're working properly. We have replaced, we will have replaced 11 of these, and before somebody asked the question about do we have sort of a planned obsolescence or a planned capital upgrade for these, the answer has been no, because we are not sure that come the next year or two whether we'll be allowed or will be able to reuse this type of technology as we have to rebuild our sewer treatment plant. We think we can reuse this technology, and that this technology will allow us to meet the new, more stringent discharge thresholds, but we're not positive of that, which is why we only replace them as we know that they're starting to break down. So that's what this is. We do need to replace 2 of them, and that would leave, I think, 3 original ones from 1988 still going. So, that's pretty much it.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Ms. Fitzgibbons, any comments?
No.
Mr. Wood?
Yeah, I'm not sure why we need another one of these. I mean, we've bought 4 already, 5 already. It's like they're commodities. Outhouses could replace this, everything. Okay, we'll go forward. I support it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we go to, again, a roll call vote.
Mr. Souza.
Yes.
Mr. Wood.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Mr. Haley.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Mrs. Loesch.
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
8 in favor, none against.
Thank you. On to new business. Before us for new business, we have proposed ordinance D-FY 18-015. It's a zoning ordinance, zoning map amendment for the South Business District, known as Lyman Place area. I will refer to Aisha Loesch for further comment or explanation, rather.
Sure. I will also defer to the town manager to give a much better explanation than what I'm about to give. My understanding was that it's currently industrial. We're looking to make it residential to help business on the other side of it. Ms. Burke and Mr. Dutton have reviewed the language and have found it to be non-problematic. And Mr. Silva would love this to get done this evening. Is there anything else I could add, or you can add, Mr. Dutton?
I will only add that this is, again, one of those, we've had a number of these instances, and this is something that, more comprehensive rezoning is intended to resolve, one of the issues it's intended to resolve. But this is essentially designed to move the line between commercial and residential AB so that residential AB lots will all be in a residential area, and commercial lots will all be in a commercial, So the lots intended to be residential will all be in a residential area, and I think for those of you that were here for Easy Street, it's sort of the comparison. It's a very similar issue.
Okay. This is going to be referred to the Community and Economic Development Committee?
Community and Economic Development and Planning Board for
And
joint
Planning
hearing.
So I make a motion to do just that.
Okay. Called by Ms. Loesch first.
No further discussion.
Ms. Fitzgibbons? Okay. Mr. George?
Through you to the town manager. So for this, is there the need for residents on abutters to be notified of the change? And if there are, is there a need for also public hearings to discuss these changes as well?
It is subject to a public hearing, correct, and we do the whatever is required for public notice. This particular area, I think, is part of a development that is currently going on, and I don't know that there are any. I can't say for sure, but I don't believe there are any residences that'll be certainly won't be any that are adversely impacted, and the notion, at least by the proponent of this change, is to use essentially a natural barrier that already exists that would separate, now more naturally commercial from residentially zoned. But as it gets into hearing and gets further down the road, I don't know that there's any particular controversy here, but everybody's notified and a public hearing is had, so you are correct.
Yeah, I'm not looking at this as controversy. I'm just looking at this as keeping the residents informed, giving them the opportunity to speak, even if everyone's in support on the assumption. I think we need to make sure that people feel empowered to come in and voice any concerns that we don't say. Okay. Thank you.
And go ahead, Mr. Wood.
I don't remember the time frame. We talked a couple years ago about back lots. I think we called them recreational lots or some other lots that are used. Could this area potentially be turned into that, or be potentially turned into other residential development if it's switched into residential AB?
I don't believe so. I think the layout that they're looking at right now, you know, again, I think the driving force behind this was to try to, you know, sort of clear the lots, portions of the lot that are laid out in residential AB, very, very similar to Easy Street in that regard. But as, you know, as we go on the public hearing process and the vetting process, we'll certainly identify whether there's any adverse impact that could come of this. So right now we don't see any, but that's certainly not to say that there could be one that we don't see.
Thank you.
So we have a motion.
Mr. President.
Go ahead, Mr. Sousa.
I have a question. Is this land between Bedford Street and that property, is that all one piece of land, all owned by one person? Is there businesses in that area there, off of Broad?
I believe there are businesses in that area. I don't believe it's all owned by one person. I think there are several ownerships along there. It affects approximately 11 lots, and those residential lots may have one owner while it's under development, but I think the commercial lots are not in the same common ownership.
How much building or how many businesses are in that area, and how much land is still available? I'm always concerned when we start taking property, turning it into more residential area. Okay, one of the things that we're really hurting for in this town is businesses to help pay our taxes, help give our schools more money. And it seems like the other day, it wasn't too long ago, we took some, built a few houses on it. Now we're taking more here. What's the next step? Are they going to come back later and say, well, you know, we own this section over here, and maybe we could put some residents in there? Is that what's going to be happening here? Lots of more?
No, I think this is, as I mentioned, I think your point's well taken, and that's always a concern. But I think, as I say, the intent here is to, you know, make a clear division between residential and commercial, and adjust the line so that it's not splitting, you know, both predominantly commercial properties or predominantly residential properties in half, which is the way it is now. And I think over the course of probably decades, the Bridgewater zoning map never tends to follow lot lines. It's just sort of like somebody took a magic marker and said, okay, this is what's going to be residential and that's going to be commercial. And when you do that, you slice right through properties so that it ends up, one property might end up being two different zoning, lying in two different zoning districts. So, you know, we want to clean up those problems so that people that, for instance, want to build a house on a lot that's predominantly residential don't have to go to the ZBA, get a variance or a special permit because, you know, a little sliver of their property lies, you know, is commercial. So it's trying to fix those problems. But your point's well taken. You know, commercial property that we've got is certainly cherished.
Mrs. Loesch?
I was just, and per the information and the assessment by the engineers, it's wetlands, so not too much will be built there.
So we have a motion and a second to refer this over to the CDC and Planning Board, and we need a voice vote for that, if I'm not mistaken. So those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Hearing none. We now move to citizens' comments. Anybody left in the citizens area would like to have a comment? State your name, address, and brief, informative. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations to those newly elected officials in town that have now fully been sworn. I wanted to say I'm part of the Old Bridgewater Historic Society Executive Board, and I just wanted to thank Mr. Wood for listening. As you heard the oath tonight that people took, it said listen to people and comment and act appropriately. He listened, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Two more points, if my brain won't help me out. I'm glad to hear that the zoning review is going forward, but you all have received a letter from the Master Plan Committee suggesting that the master plan be updated in advance of that. I understand the movement forward, but I think doing zoning without an updated vision for this town is problematic. You could be doing things with zoning that the people don't want. So I would ask the town manager to actually put together as part of this package that there would be serious visioning for what the town is and where they want to go to in terms of the overall development and where development should occur, et cetera. That way, the zoning will in fact be far more effective in terms of meeting what the people want. The third piece that I wanted to ask, I have not heard from the town manager about the appointment of a downtown revitalization committee. That was promised to the master plan committee as of end of February. It's now May. The last promise I had was that it would be appointed in May. We're still waiting for that, and I think it's urgent in terms of some of the things that are happening in the downtown area that are going before ZBA, et cetera, that we in fact get that committee in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from any citizens present? Please step up. Seeing none. No note here for moving into, oh, look, I missed another one. Sorry, guys. Council comments. How many councilors I forget? Do we start left or right? We'll start with my left with Mr. Fitzgibbons, the former president.
Congratulations to Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Chase, Ms. Loesch on re-election to the council, or your election in the first place after being appointed. And congratulations to Mr. Haley and Mr. Gallagher on the president and vice president. I'm sure we're in good hands for that. Also, congratulations to Mr. Dolan and Mr. Hammond on being elected to the school committee again. The school committee is definitely in good hands with them, and all of our library trustees who got elected, even though they served maybe for just a day or so. But it's important that we do change up, as I call it, the Paul Lynde seat. Only people of a certain age get that joke. Every year to be able to, yes, you have nice hair. But be able to have a different voice in the center and be able to, have a different face of the council, and I'm sure you'll do a fine job. So I look forward to a productive year. Thank you.
Everything that he said. And don't forget to donate for 4th of July. It's a great day. I will not be at the Memorial Day parade. I'll be in Nevada, unfortunately, but I will be thinking of all of you. And I had one more note. Nope, donate to the 4th. Okay, I got it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George.
So just a couple things. Congratulations to all that were elected. I'll make it broad so I don't miss anybody. I appreciate everyone who either stepped up for the first time or stepped up again to help the town in any capacity, which I think is great. I also want to say congratulations to the committee, Ms. Hunt, on, I thought was a great day on Saturday for the Bridgewater Town cleanup. I forget what the tonnage was. Okay, but I can tell you it's a lot. Just getting the group together, I know it was like herding cats, but Noonan Waste stepped up, the town stepped up, residents stepped up, and we put a good dent into the trash, but there's just so much more to be done. It's just a constant battle. But the other thing too that I thought was very, very nice is people that were driving by, depending on where you were, would actually give a thumbs up, recognition to say thank you. which wasn't expected but was very much appreciated. So I thought that was very, very well done. And, to everyone out there in the room and everyone out there, we just have to continuously stay on top of that in many different ways. So I thought that was great, and thanks to all. I know, Mr. Wood is going to bring up the free cash and outline the restrictions and things of that nature, which I think is very, very good for people to understand. I'm still going to echo my concerns around what I think is a very conservative estimate of revenue that I think creates a larger free cash number than I think we really need to have. The reason I'm saying that is if we're able to bake in some of that free cash into revenue, we have many more options to put towards town expenses. And as we all know, we have a lot of town expenses. Not to say that we have to allocate every single dime that we think revenue's coming in, but I think we would be doing our better job if we were able to budget the reserves within our full revenue and have free cash as just something that we can put off to the side. I think with what I've been reading within the news, that the legislature is actually poised to increase education finance. I'd like to see that brought up, and I'd like for us to jump ahead of that. I know that we're not going to get exact numbers, but I think it is critical that we look for every dime that we can get, not only for the schools, but if we've got other avenues as well, because I'm not looking at that revenue estimate as just something that's going to go for the school. It goes for town expenses as well, and I'd like to see that as a regular revenue versus free cash that's looked up as a one-time revenue that has restrictions that obviously help the town in the long run as well. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I just like to see that number come down. Last thing on my notes is May 22nd is going to be the budget hearing that Mr. Dutton brought up. I think it's critical for people to come, voice their concerns, listen to the presentation, listen to all of it to understand it. I'm going to try to get out ahead of this, and hopefully I don't have to have a fellow counselor come to my defense, even though I appreciate it. Also, May 22nd is the Bridgewater Rainham Academic Awards Night. My daughter will be there. I will be there. So I don't exactly know when that's going to end. I will commit to everyone here and on TV. As soon as it ends, I'll be here. But I will be at that academic awards first. So I just want to get that out in front of everyone in case people are wondering where I am. It seems to come up in different venues. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Chase.
Thank you. I'd just like to echo some of Councilor George's sentiments with regard to both the cleanup campaign on Saturday, which I thought was a tremendous success, and as well, of course, congratulations to all of my fellow councilors. Congratulations to Mrs. Hunt as well, who's here. Those of you who have once again gained the trust of the town electorate, and I look forward to working with you all. Just one additional note, I thought I'd share something of interest I had seen today in the Bridgewater Independent online version. It was a brief article about two residents of the town, Ryan Saba and Ray Armstead, and if the names sound familiar to some of you, these are the two young men who aided in the rescue of I believe, an elderly couple on the train tracks during one of the January snowstorms. They were able to remove them from their vehicle stuck between the crossing gates, I believe it was, just seconds before a incoming train destroyed the vehicle. And I bring this up only because the article points out, apart from just extolling their virtues, which has been done in the past, over the past few months, but it notes that during tomorrow evening's Boston Celtics playoff game, they will be honored for their contribution, and I just thought it's something that I'm not certain that will actually be part of the telecast. Maybe it will, but in any event, I thought I would make note of it because I think it's something that is worthy of mention. Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, I congratulate everybody that won their election or re-election on April 28th. And I also want to thank Councilor Fitzgibbons for a very spirited, debated year as president. We had some good conversations and some tough meetings, but you did a very good job, in my opinion, leading the council the past year. And congratulate to my good friend Ted in becoming president of the council. I think we'll work well together, and we'll all work well together this next year. There are some very tough things that are going to be coming up this year. And congratulate to all those that won election on Saturday. And thanks to the 510 people that came out to vote, actually. And the 400 and some odd that voted for me. Anyway, to kind of spin off a little bit of what Councilor George was talking about, the budget hearing in 2 weeks, it is very important that those that can attend to speak their mind and voice about concerns and questions about the budget, it's very, very important. We had a pretty long discussion about the budget, not just last night, the Budget and Finance Committee, and the many joint meetings that we've had with the Finance Committee over the past few months. And I did bring up some points last night regarding revenue figures and so forth. And hopefully in 2 weeks we can have a better discussion on that to see if there is anything that can be done with the fiscal 19 budget. And thank everyone that participated last Saturday in the town cleanup. It was very well organized. And I made a big mistake, is I was asked to bring cups for people to have water, and I brought styrofoam cups. And boy, did I get a earful from one of the organizers, but they're in my car right now, and they're going to be returned to the store, and I'm going to get a refund, okay? But as has been discussed at this meeting, there is a bill before the legislature right now regarding putting a tax on nips. And I don't know where our state senator or state representative fall in their support or non-support of that bill, but it took me about an hour. I was with Councilor George. It took me about an hour to fill a bag up of trash. And it got heavy. And it wasn't one of those white kitchen bags. It was a big garbage bag. There was some big debris, large debris in there, but I had at least 50 nip bottles just in my bag. And they are everywhere, as all of you that were participating can see. And I think something needs to be done. It doesn't mean just because you pay 5 cents more, you're not going to throw it out the window, but somebody might pick it up a lot quicker if it's on the street. So hopefully that goes through. I'm in support of that. And I want to congratulate all the Bridgewater State University graduates who are going to graduate this weekend. And hopefully they go out there and do great things. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wood.
All right, thank you. A few items. I'll try to be brief. Congratulations to everybody at the election, including the town clerk, councilors. I don't remember who else I could check off. I couldn't vote for a number of you at the table here, but I was in Detroit with the team where they performed very well. It was a very exciting time for robotics. It's amazing to see like 15,000 kids just going wild with gadgets and everything else. So I would be also in the biological rotator if I forgot that May 22nd was the awards night, because I will attend that also. So we will try to get here as quickly as possible. The subject of trash, thank you to everybody that organized and cleaned up. I was over at the Lions Fishing Derby, which is an annual event that the Lions put on. It's free to the kids. It's over at Skeeter Mill Pond. Kids come over to fish their prizes. It's a great time. It just happened to coincide to the same Saturday. Actually, the town clerk and I had talked a little bit about that, and we couldn't do anything about it. It was that Saturday. But I want to return back to trash for a second. in addition to the volunteers, I witnessed something earlier this week, and I brought it to the attention of the town manager. And we don't actually have a litter ordinance here in town. And it's not for people, it's for the trash haulers. So I was driving down the street and I saw, I won't name the large hauler, but there's only about 4 in town, so it's one of them. And that one has a reputation for dropping trash. And I witnessed myself, I couldn't stop and say something in that particular instant, but I watched them drop trash on the road and drive off. And now one of those pizza boxes is in my neighbor's yard, right? So I've heard this about a couple of our trash haulers, that in the course of emptying the trash, they don't do a solid job of getting the waste into the bin, protecting the bin, and not having it blow out on the side of the street. And I'm pretty sure down by the river near us that it's not people just throwing trash out, that it's probably trash coming off of vehicles, and maybe this. So we need to, in addition to the NIPS, which I think is a good idea, I think we need to explore how do we enforce the trash haulers to actually keep a clean track as they go forward. I also want to congratulate the high school for a fantastic performance of Footloose over the weekend. Just because my daughter had a lead has nothing to do with that, but all the remarks all over the place was it's a professional level show, and they have been for a number of years. The coordinators and organizers and volunteers over at the high school do a fantastic job twice a year or more. So hopefully in the fall, everybody can get out and see the next one. And then finally, I'll mention the free cash. We'll get into discussions more on free cash. I forgot to mention Ann, if you can also, or maybe it was Lori that forwarded, I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of the calculation of free cash. And you'll see that it's not just a lot of free cash. A lot of the sources come from very predictable areas, such as local receipts. And local receipts at the upper end are unpredictable. So we don't know over the course of a year if a lot of people are going to build or not build, if a lot of people are going to buy cars or not buy cars. When you have an economic downturn, those trends fall instead of rise. And this year, unlike other years, we're getting 2 additional sources of revenue. One is coming from the hotel. And so we're able to certify it's $160,000 or thereabouts. Yeah. Nice source of revenue. Next year, again, you can't predict occupancy rates on a hotel, so you can't take 100% of that, but you could take a portion of that and be confident that we can use that, and the rest goes into that space where it probably eventually becomes free cash. And the other area is, believe it or not, we're taxing marijuana. Now, people know that we've banned marijuana, but we are taxing marijuana, and this year, the tax on marijuana is going to bring about $100,000 into the budget process as other revenue. There is a forecast that says next year, if the second dispensary goes online, that revenue may increase to $300,000. But again, we can't guarantee that. So what we'll do in the forecasting and the budget process is take a portion, a confident portion of that $100,000 and use it in next year's sources of revenue for next year's budget. So it's almost a catch-up process with some of these local receipts and other things that vary greatly. If the trend is upward, that 85% line or other line moves upwards, but if the trend is down, it moves down. And the thing that we want to avoid is an operational deficit and the loss of bodies, because the downward trend hasn't been captured in some other reserve. So we'll talk more about that later. But again, congratulations to my colleagues, the town clerk, the library trustees, and all the others that participated in our government, and thank you.
Mr. Souza.
I'd like to thank all those who served, and especially congratulate all of those who were elected, everyone here, and those who are not. And so much has been said today, and I'm not one for beating a dead horse, so I'm not going to say too much more.
So that's it. All right. My turn. First one is president. First, of course, everybody that made it in their seat, retained their seat. Excellent job, and thank you for my peers here for putting me in the center square. And I hope to do a decent job. I don't know. Tim ran a very efficient meeting. He was very good. Went through some trying meetings and hearings, and I'm sure I have a few ahead of me, but I'll do my best. Glad I have somebody solid to my right. Dennis, congratulations. Speaking of Dennis, or Mr. Gallagher, as it were, I think he took my comments, you might have, I write too large when I make notes, about the small containers, the nips. I counted my group as we collected them for about the same amount of time, about an hour. We had $7.20 potentially of small plastic bottles, some glass bottles. You couldn't get 5 steps without seeing them clearly. It became a really quick game, although I didn't let my son pick any of them up without plastic gloves on. There were quite a bit. And even a couple of sleeves, the cardboard that goes with it. So you'd see 5 or 6 of the same brand and a cardboard cover with it. So, this is, I don't know how many come in that, but there's others around. So it's, I could, in an hour, I can make $7. And if I really need $7, I don't know if I'll be out there personally. If you see me, ask me if I'm okay. But there's money in the ground. It's modern day panhandling, I guess. Warm weather, hearing motorcycles reminds me that many, many friends and family that ride motorcycles. We've had an exceptionally difficult winter, lots of sand on the ground. So be careful. Try to be aware of motorcyclists and cyclists as well on bicycles. We've got a pretty busy town center, and we want to make it as welcoming as we can to pedestrians all over town, for that matter. So let's just keep our eyes and ears open for the sounds of motorcycles, children, and cyclists as well. That's it for me. We have no executive session, so
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
and that's it. Can I?
All in favor?
All in favor? Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, it's a wrap.